Welcome back, Red Spotters. Another show here in the Red Spotlight Entertainment Podcast. I'm your host, Alexis J. Soto, and I'm joined today by Mr. Peter Martinez.
And aren't you?
Well, actually, the last episode you weren't.
Oh, that's right, because I wasn't invited.
Yeah, you actually weren't, but you were with us in spirit.
Because I wasn't a founding member of this shit show.
No, I'll get into it right now in a bit, but that's not really why. But anyway, we so hope that you enjoyed your holiday Thanksgiving weekend or week or whatever you want to say. But since we're back, we actually have one of the films that we'll be talking about today is actually perfect for that holiday in so many ways, of which, of course, we'll get into. Yeah, they really, yeah, they really are. So, yeah. Did you enjoy your break?
What break?
Oh, that's right. There really wasn't much of anything. But here we are, Red Spotlight number 100. Oops.
You're off by about 100.
Yeah. So today we're going to be reviewing the films Knives Out, that was written and directed by Rian Johnson, or as some would call him, Ruin Johnson. And we'll also be talking about the JoJo Rabbit, which was written and directed by Taika Waititi.
Or as some would call him, Taika... I don't know. I should have came up with one before I opened my mouth. Go ahead.
You usually do.
Yeah.
You usually do.
No, I got nothing.
Didn't happen in this particular case. Yeah, but those are the films that we'll be talking about today on Red Spotlight
Taika TT. Oh, got him.
Those are the films we'll be talking about today on number 100. Those are the films we'll be talking about today on Red Spotlight number 201. I have to say 2 now. This is 201. And previously to what you were saying, the 200th show, which was our previous show, was clearly, as it was, I think, signaled many times in that recording, pre-recorded like a month in advance because of all of the stuff that we did in November. And I knew that by the time that 200 came along, nobody would be available to do it, and I knew that we had to get to reviews like the ones we're doing right now. So there really wasn't any time, realistically speaking, to like have like a big show, nor did I want to be quite honest with you. I've kind of like, you know, if people want to hear like, I guess, roundtable shows that we used to do, they can listen to them.
It's pretty ridiculous because we had previously announced that we were going to have a massive roundtable.
No, in fact, the recording that took place happened a month before you said those words.
Oh, really?
And I made sure to clear up that you were just kidding, because that wasn't real.
I wasn't. Oh.
Yeah, you were. No, you were, because that was never happened. And realistically speaking, like if we were gonna do like an actual thing, it would have involved like at least you, me, and Kyle, which is hard enough as it is just to get like anything involved with the three of us, and then let alone the Morenos and anybody else involved. So it was just like, you know, I don't want.
Me and the Morenos got beef anyway.
Oh, tell me about it. I mean, it was hard enough just to get, I think for the first time in a very long, it had been months. So what happened was when we saw these films, we saw them, which is a story in and of itself. We saw them back to back at our local theater, which is a minor miracle, which we'll get to. But it was also a minor miracle because it was the first time in a long time that the three of us had been together and seen a film.
Yeah.
Like, it had been since July in the fucking Lion King when we saw a movie.
Don't bring that travesty up.
It wasn't a travesty. It was a disaster. Mm-hmm. But that was the last time that we actually were together in a theater. I guess you can tell it left some scars. Clearly. And, yeah, we had planned this pre-Thanksgiving double feature, which is fun, and we had a great time. But it was one that I think we're going to be appreciating for quite some time, because as we had been talking about it for, I think, months on this show, because we live in Tatooine, you know? Mm-hmm. If there's a place that's farthest from the center of the sun, clearly, the fact
center
that we
of the
got...
galaxy.
Yes, that's the line.
I'm sorry, guys. He's a fake Star Wars fan.
Yeah. Coming December 19th. Anyway,
Dun,
gonna
dun,
be
dun,
throwing
dun.
a lot of shit at that movie.
Mm-hmm.
Anywho, the fact that we got these movies, both of these films, was something that kind of really was beyond unexpected. You told me, Peter, that just one day you were scrolling through the showtimes and out of nowhere they had JoJo Rabbit.
Yeah.
Because that film has been out for I think over a month and a half at this point, at least when it made its first initial release. And at that point, it's not going to come here. Clearly it's not going to come to our place. And it's so weird because it's at the end of if not the very end of its theatrical run, and we get it. and the hilarious thing is, I called them and they were like, yeah, but you better make time to see it quick because we're not gonna be showing it much longer. And it had already been there just a few days.
Yeah.
So we were like, we can't pass up this opportunity. And then Knives Out was also playing that day, so we just took the opportunity to just go and do that. And so we're gonna go ahead and start with JoJo Rabbit.
JoJo Rabbit.
Taika Waititi, which, surprise, surprise, was actually the rare occasion where we get to see a film of this scope with actual audience members in the theater, and of which they seem to enjoy, I'd say.
Yeah, I'd say. Let me break down this film for you real quick, courtesy of our sponsors. They very much, in fact, sponsor us. Don't let anyone tell you differently. Letterboxd, I think it says. If you sign up now, you will get a 50% off your subscription. Black Friday deal. Get at it. Okay. This is the description from that particular app. An anti-hate satire. Boy, they just went straight to the point.
Yeah.
A World War II satire that follows a lonely German boy whose worldview is turned upside down when he discovers his single mother is hiding a young Jewish girl in their attic. Aided only by his idiotic imaginary friend, Adolf Hitler, JoJo must confront his blind nationalism. Fun for the whole family.
And topical.
Yeah.
If I may go ahead and have an opening salvo for this, I adore this movie. I love the film. I love practically all of it. The characters, the performances. It is a satire. But what I think is not something that I feel is stereotypical or common in a satire is weight, emotion, heart. And in so many ways, as you and I were talking about this film in our After Dark review, as we kind of we're unwrapping the film, it is all those things, kind of masking the fact that it is also a coming of age story for JoJo here.
Absolutely.
So there's a lot I have to say about the film, but the opening salvo, I love the film.
Okay. My opening salvo, as you put it, I loved it quite a bit as well. I actually didn't expect to like it as much as I did. I thought I was gonna like it and be like, yeah, that was good. But I didn't expect.
But why is that though? I'm a Taika fan, but I'm the least I think high on Taika than our group anyway.
I don't think that's true. I didn't love Thor Ragnarok. You love Thor Ragnarok. Kyle loves
please. They
Thor
had a
Ragnarok.
Marvel logo on it. I mean, we all know that's the real reason why I love it.
I mean, obviously.
But it's
you're a complete shill. You're exactly the scum of the earth that Martin Scorsese's talking about.
You're not as high on Thor Ragnarok, but I'm not as high as on What We Do in the Shadows, although I like the film
true.
quite a bit. So it's
Yeah.
like, I mean, it's a give and take, but I generally have an overall appreciation for what Taika does. But I think it might be interesting to say that I may have actually loved this the most in some weird way. I think Kyle didn't like it as much, but he did like it too, though.
Yeah. Well, I mean, okay. I can kind of see what you're saying. For whatever reason, I didn't expect to like it as much as I did. I thought I would like, oh, this is good. But I really, really enjoyed it. And I ended up connecting with it in a much deeper level. I don't know. That sounds up my own ass. It wasn't really deeper, but a more emotional level that I expected to. And I left like going like, wow, I really, really enjoyed that film. Yeah. You know, trying to keep it short and sweet. That's kind of my general thoughts on the film.
Yeah, I think it's, for me, one of my favorite films of the year. And something about it, before we get into, talking about like more details.
Spoilers.
About the plot and spoilers. But, it does, in what I would think would be a Herculean effort that maybe not, is so appreciated. And to be fair to maybe some of your, I guess, lowered expectations, there were mixed reviews on the film. There were people who, let's just say that there were mixed reviews about the subject matter, which, boy, that is definitely understandable. But I think Taika did an outstanding job in terms of balancing the different tones, the tonal shifts in this film, which, I think it benefited my overall review of it because it's not something that I was expecting, quite frankly. I was expecting a wonderful movie because I know Taika and his work, but I was expecting it to be all laughs, and it was, and it is a barrel of laughs, to be quite frank with you. And it does what great satires do. But as I said in my After Dark, it's like, what was to me a complete shock was the weight that it brought to the story. It added something else that I think made it all the better. But the fact that it actually was pulled off that way, balancing, and especially with the subject matter of what we're talking about, that's impressive to me.
Yeah, I think maybe that's why my expectations weren't as high. Because I thought like, this is kind of an impossible line to really keep, so I don't think he's really going to go for it in certain areas. But he did end up going for it in certain areas, and he was able to very masterfully walk that line that you have to with considering the subject material, which, like, holy shit, if someone just like handed me a story and it's like, here, write a script for this, it has to be a comedic satire, and then like just the description I just gave, I'd be like, fuck that, I'll pay you so I don't have to do that, because I don't need a million angry people on my ass for the rest of my life. If I wanted that, I'd just make a Star Wars film,
which I feel is honestly kind of worse than even touching Nazism. But to be fair, though, to be fair on that issue, it may depend. I'd say I maybe how sensitive. I mean, we all should be sensitive to Nazis. Let's be real about it. But I think the fact that it is a satire film, and the fact that a lot of, I guess, the humor of which some people may be turned off, I guess, is balanced out by something else in the film that's unexpected. I don't know. It just like,
I wouldn't even say the humor, just the lighthearted nature
of how it treats, the subject matter. Yeah.
To get into a little bit, like when it started off, like it came out very lighthearted, and at first it's like, oh yeah, this is funny, but then it's like, oh fuck, like lighthearted. It's like, I don't know, it had like the fucking lightheartedness of like a family film about a kid going to day camp.
It is a family movie, but
yeah. Little known fact: this film used to be hard R, but then Disney bought Fox. And they had
Oh,
to they completely changed the script to make it a family film. Yeah.
yeah. No. Look, to me, I know that there will be takes, and there have been takes on many of these great films that we've had this year about some nihilistic neoliberal point of view. But to me, when I watch the film, it's very clearly making fun of these disgusting people. You know, never at any point did I get the impression that there was like, yeah, there's propaganda and it's played for laughs, but you know.
But I think that's the thing, though. For some people, that's not good enough. That even if you're making fun of the people, you're still lighthearted, being lighthearted when talking about the subject.
Which I could understand, and certainly I do. I do, but the film ends in a way which practically all those people die. I mean, not to give the ending away, but I mean...
I think history gave the ending away.
Yeah. Yeah, so we can talk about these themes more and more as we start, lifting the veil for spoilers here, but, to talk about the film more openly. But the timing... The timeline of this movie is interesting because this is basically like the twilight of the Third Reich, shall we say. It's the very end, the tail end of the war. Yeah. Things are very quickly, falling apart for the Nazis, shall we say. And how the movie opens, you're right. It is played off lighthearted, except that this kid, JoJo, is excited about going to Hitler camp, basically, or Hitler Youth, as you say, as it was known. And Taika plays the role of Adolf Hitler here, an imaginized version of Adolf Hitler inside JoJo's mind. And there, it starts off with Hitler, trying to like amp up JoJo, and it's like, give me a Hell Hitler, and it's like they keep going back and forth like Hell Hitler, Hell Hitler. And it's like, this is something that shouldn't be funny, but it's hilarious. And I'm glad that the audience kind of caught that from the beginning. And they laughed pretty consistently throughout the film. So it didn't get awkward in that sense, at least.
Especially because there are some people, I feel that like, they're just like, they go to the movie theater midday. They don't know what they're going to watch. They just pick a movie and then walk in. So I'm glad it seemed everyone was rolling with the film because they could have gone another way. I thought Taika Waititi was great as Mr. Adolf, piece of shit. I don't think it was like an Academy Award winning performance, but part of me wants him to get nominated just so
for the role of Adolf Hitler.
When they have like during the Oscars when it's like Meryl Streep for the one who knocks, and then it's played all serious. Taika Waititi as Adolf Hitler, and then it just shows him acting like a complete ass.
Which again, as a satire, the film completely makes fun of Adolf Hitler and the Nazis. So that's and Taika is great. By the way,
I'm doing it early. That's why the First Order works.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I threw in a Star Wars reference early just to get it out of the way.
Okay.
Because you make
to
fun
me,
of
the film in so many ways, yes. I think what's more impressive to me is Taika's writing and direction, not so much the performance.
Yes.
But it's a very good performance, But it's like, it's not really, again, Adolf Hitler's movie, it's JoJo's movie. And in so many ways, regardless of how good the writing and the direction is, and it is, the film, I felt, rested so much on whether or not the actor who played JoJo could carry the movie. And that's a tall order.
Roman Griffin Davis.
Roman Griffin Davis, I think, gave, to me, one of my favorite performances of the year. And this is one that I'm going to remember. There's something about him that he had to capture, this earnest sense about, where he is, but he also had to capture innocence.
Yeah.
And To me, yeah.
Because you got to ride that line. You have to like the kid. You have to like him at some point, but he's also has to be spouting some really evil shit, obviously. So
not realizing.
But even not realizing it, he's still saying it, So you have to, as an actor, you have to have all of that in your head as you're doing the performance. You go too far to one side, the audience, you completely lose the audience.
Yeah.
You go too hard to the other side, you're not seen as a threat or as broken a human being as the audience should be seeing you as. But he was able to do it. I thought he did a really good job. He was also really funny. Oh, real quick, I just want to shout out. Shoot. Oh, I can't find the little actor's friend. But who his friend Alfie? Oh, was his name Alfie?
I'm not sure if it was Alfie. I think it was some other name.
His little friend with the glasses was hilarious. He was really funny. Okay.
Every time he showed up on screen, there'd be
smiled.
A huge laugh. No. And he would smile too, which made it even more charming. One hilarious cutaway, because it was happening like when hell was raining down on the town. He accidentally launched a rocket into some kind of a store or something, and it blew up, which is hilarious in so many ways. No, look, I think what is a big part of why the film works so well, not just as a satire, but as a coming-of-age story, is because it's not just, great performances, but in terms of how the characters were written, they just felt real, And that's not typical of what I think are, accustomed in terms of, the satire genre, It's like, it is those things, but it also is, what you would come to expect in a coming-of-age story. And at some point, maybe from the beginning, you really begin to just feel for this kid and all of the things that he is going. I mean, you feel for him immediately because he's being brainwashed clearly by these like evil people. But and there are truly some horrific people in this movie. Still funny, but some really horrific people that we see in the film. But it's also the side characters that we see in the film. I thought ScarJo was terrific in this.
I loved her in this. She had a real opportunity to flex those actor muscles, and she did it.
No, you forget how great of an actor she is. I mean, she does so many films that you forget some of the, like she. A lot of people were talking about her to be a supporting actor nomination for her performance in Her, which is a complete voice performance. Yeah. So she's great, and she really threw herself in this role. And talking about the film and the plot, it becomes evident from a very early point that she's really not a Nazi, and that there was something else going on with her.
That was one of my first favorite early moments of the film, in which it's all whimsical, like la 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 la, once upon a time in Nazi Germany kind of thing. Very bright colors, very different from your typical war film, as you would call it. And then they're just stopped dead in their tracks because there's a line of 5 people just hanged in the center of town. And it's still this beautiful storybook-looking town, colorful, and just atrocity right in the middle, and people going about their daily lives. And you have JoJo try to just kind of look away, because he's a kid, and that's not kind of who he is, despite wanting to be that. But his mom makes him look. And I love, one of my favorite lines in the movie is he asks, like, what did they do? And she says, what they could. And in so few words, they really expressed a lot, and I really like that.
And as we come to know later in the film, that she probably knew those people.
Yeah, they were probably friends of hers. They were probably people she knew quite intimately, as we find out later. So that adds another layer to it as well. And she can't really let out any real sign of emotion over it because, there's eyes everywhere.
Right. And I think where we see the growth of JoJo is while he is sidelined for the accident, when he kind of blows himself in his own face, if you will. Which was,
I gotta say, that was one of the funniest parts of the movie.
Yeah.
When he explodes and his little body goes flying. And then, what's his name? Sam Rockwell's like, yeah, don't do what he did. Like, just nonchalantly.
He could have been dead for, like, that could have been a dead body flying off into the air and just like, yeah,
don't do that.
What he did. Which, okay, we'll get to Sam Rockwell. But in terms of JoJo, like, he gets sidelined and then he discovers that his mother has been harboring a young Jewish girl in their attic. A la Anne Frank, if you will.
What's her name?
Yes.
Thomasin McKenzie. Who, by
she
the
was
way,
also great.
She was in one of my favorite films last year, Leave No Trace. It didn't make my top 10, but it was in my honorable mentions. Yeah.
Do not recall that film existing.
I know. No, you little bitch. I know when we do our top 10s, whenever I start talking, you just like space out.
You mentioned so many names and titles, and as you, Mr. Martinez, say, names are pretty meaningless. So, there you go.
But films aren't.
Now, in terms of the arc that we see for JoJo, it's really the affection that he starts to see, that starts to grow for, what's her name? The character's name again?
Her name is Elsa.
Elsa.
You should know.
Yeah, that's pretty timely. As actors, they have a great dynamic, and they had to for a lot of the scenes that we see them together. But it's like a lot of the delusional fantasies that he's been, fed really just begin to just fall apart as he begins to grow closer and closer with her. He still wants to hold the ideal of I guess what he would consider his patriotism, to the Reich and everything, that no, these people are terrible. And it's like, and then by process of all of this, you begin to really, I think for the first time, understand, and I do believe this was founded in like how the real propaganda was like in Nazi Germany, how they portrayed Jewish people to be like. Asking them for their horns. I don't know if this is what
I'll say. I might be wrong. I think it was exaggerated a bit. Because obviously, everything in this film is exaggerated a bit. So,
right. But
for comedic purposes.
A lot of
Hitler's
fantasies. A lot of Hitler's fantasies were by design supposed to be, fanatical in a way. And it's like, I don't know who it was that pointed this out, but when I was watching reviews in the film, but Hitler's fantasies were what a 10-year-old boy would dream up or would think up of. And that's why maybe it appealed so much to a 10-year-old boy here in JoJo. Where it's maybe like,
maybe why the 1,000-year Reich didn't quite get to those 1,000 years. Yeah.
Yeah. So that whole dynamic between Elsa and JoJo was adorable to watch. It was
I love the way that Elsa was portrayed too. Like just to start off, I love when he discovers her. Again, because the film I feel is very much from JoJo's point of view.
Yeah.
So it's like a horror film, right? Like he discovers her, and then like she creepily sticks her hand out, like it was shot like a horror film because that's the way he viewed the Jewish people, even though it's just this young girl. But I also enjoyed that the young girl wasn't just a young scared girl, that was like, help, I'm scared. She had a lot of personality,
strength,
and a lot of strength to her, that I think worked really well, especially in the more emotional moments when she sort of lets her guard down a little bit.
Yeah.
And reflects on her life or her lack of life. All of that worked really well. Yeah.
Can we talk about the and I think it dipped its toes a little bit in suspense when the Gestapo showed up out of nowhere.
Oh yeah. led by Stephen Merchant.
Mm-hmm.
Famous English, I think, actor. Yeah, that was very tense.
Especially because it came out of nowhere. It came at the worst possible moment, because at that point, for the first time, JoJo let Elsa be around the house. He let her take a shower and everything, and it's like he was making food for her, and then who comes on his doorstep? The freaking Gestapo, which I think that scene is also saying something else that we find out later, but we'll get to that, about what's happened. But as to how, because I was wondering, okay, but if the Gestapo is here, why?
There's a reason why they're there.
Uh-huh. And it hits hard. But for the moment, as suspenseful as it was also hilarious too. Seeing all the people, literally for how many people are in the room, they have to hail Hitler each other, which is one of those things where it's it's funny, then it stops being funny, and then it
comes all the way around back to being funny again. I didn't know one of the funniest running gags for me in a film this entire year would just be people saying Heil Hitler.
Yeah.
A million times.
Yeah, and of course it happens further when oh my god, can you find out the characters' names? I don't know. It was Sam Rockwell. Sam Rockwell came into the house.
Captain Klenzendorf.
And who was the other one? The actor that plays Theon?
Oh. Alfie Allen, Sub Officer Finkel.
Right. We should also mention that this is based on a novel of some sort. So
is it?
Yeah. Yeah.
No way.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Okay.
Google it.
That's interesting.
Just to make sure I didn't, fabricate that. But I'm pretty sure that's correct. But yeah, those two walk in, and it's also in the moment again. It's because so much is happening, it's played for laughs. But their entrance, I felt when watching it again, also.
Oh yeah, it is based off of.
Also was meant to tell us something else. I mean, there had to have been a reason why they were there, in particular with Sam Rockwell, and the relationship that he has with JoJo, which we'll get into in a little bit later. But there was also a very particular reason why I assume why they just showed up out of nowhere, and for why, let's just say, Sam Rockwell does what he does next in that particular sequence as it plays out. Because it's interesting. I think the assumption is the Gestapo being the Gestapo. If JoJo can find Elsa, they would be able to easily find her, especially since they would be looking for that, which they were, since we know what happened. But it's the suspense is also played off as we go upstairs, especially when she reveals herself, and then it's the whole movie stops for a second. It's what? Oh shit! We're gonna do this.
Well, at first, obviously, they come into the house. They're suspicious. They're looking everywhere. JoJo's freaking out. They hear a noise. They go up to the room to investigate, into the room in which she's hiding, and of course, they're looking everywhere. And JoJo, not a good liar.
No.
10-year-old kid. And then eventually turn around and boom, you see her there in clothes. She's pretending to be his long dead sister, which, by the way, they never explain
how she died.
Yeah.
What they do say is that Elsa was friends with that long dead sister.
Yeah.
And that's a big reason why the mom took her in.
Mm-hmm.
But as you were saying.
And of course they're oh, this girl. So the Gestapo starts questioning her, and then of course comes in and asks for her papers. And then this is where the biggest tension lies, because she doesn't have any papers. I think she's able to find the sister's papers in the drawer, hands it to Sam Rockwell's character, and you assume they're friends, so you assume she can remember the friend's name, date of birth, all of that. So, she names off the questions she asks. And Sam Marco is oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, that's her. And, a little bit more tense things happen, but eventually they leave.
But it was one specific question that she couldn't correctly answer. And that was the date of birth. And Sam Rockwell had the answer in his hand. He lets him go.
Yeah.
And I think if you go back and look at that scene, it's evident from his point of view that he knew the entire time, wait, this person's supposed to be dead.
He knows the family. And then if that wasn't clear, she got the information wrong. And he never explicitly says that he knew or that he's helping her, because even at the end, when he tells JoJo, like, hey, go home, take care of your sister, he's still saying your sister. But it's kind of like he's even to the end, he's just sort of playing it up like, I don't know anything, go live your life. Which kind of brings us to the Sam Rockwell character, who is very interesting. Maybe the most interesting in the film, as far as who he is. I'll just come out and say it. There's several undertones that he's probably gay.
I mean, I think it was pretty obvious. There was, shall we say, because every time we cut to him and, what was the character's name? Lieutenant
You just
Giles?
want to say the...
I keep wanting to say, it was Alfie. The actor's name is Alfie something. I'm
Finkel.
sorry.
I'd say Officer Finkel.
Officer Finkel. They were very close with each other. I mean, it's like whenever we'd cut to them, they'd be doing things that you just, wait, what? Mm-hmm. Like there was this weird, and I kept trying to figure out what the fuck they were doing the second time I saw it, but JoJo walks in, and it's like, and Sam Rockwell was like about to put something in Officer Finkel's mouth in a playful way, in the office. And it was hilarious, but like it was in clear view of everyone. So it wasn't like something that was, I guess, hidden or something. Because a lot of the things that we saw happened.
It was hidden. It's just everyone around them's kind of idiots. Because there was a couple moments where like they were sort of, talking intimately. And then people would walk in and they'd just kind of like, walk away from each other.
Because he would, and this is a hilarious bit, right? Because Sam Rockwell would yell at Officer Giles. Was that the name? Giles? I keep Officer
Finkel.
Officer
Kyle.
I said Giles.
I know. What the heck is Giles?
I don't know. There was this moment where Sam Rockwell was yelling at Officer Finkel. For bringing literal German shepherds instead of the damn dogs.
Dogs, German shepherds.
And I love how that comes back at the end when you see the German shepherds.
You see the
German
shepherds fighting with the...
Yeah. But anyway, and then he yells at him and like in front of everyone, but then like ever so like, said in a lower voice, he's like, I'm sorry for yelling and everything. It's like, it's a very, to me, it was a pretty clear indication of what that relationship was. Mm-hmm. I think it's fair to say.
What I find is interesting about that though is that him being homosexual is used to humanize him, not make fun of him. Whereas past Nazi satires, like say something like The Producers, which I do love, it's they had Hitler play a homosexual, and that's sort of making fun of Hitler, so to speak, or at least. The Nazis wouldn't find it very nice. So that's good enough. But I did find that interesting because it started there, but then extended to him making certain decisions. Like he was a warrior, not a warrior, but he was a soldier.
A soldier who very clearly has been sidelined.
But also committed to being a soldier. But
and there's something twofold about that. And not to cut you off, but just to add a little bit more to that character is when we open the film, he's very much been sidelined because of his injury. He's not the vision of an Aryan race, so he's been sidelined for that. And and you're right about, his identity being used to humanize him. I wasn't sure at the beginning of it whether it was because of his just general attitude or just because of what's happened to him, but he never came off as like a true believer, shall we say, in this Nazism.
Mm-hmm. And to be fair, there had to be a lot more than we think, people like that. That you're a soldier and you're committed to being a soldier. Maybe you care about your country and you're committed to that. But as far as the ideology and some of the nastier things that come along with it, that might have not been what you were about. A very morally gray character, and I found that really interesting. Especially at the end.
The end was wow. Well, I mean, one of the funny things before we get to that point is he fights his final battle with that crazy uniform with like. Did he have mascara on?
He had mascara, and that's what I mean. I think it was almost like the entire film. He realized he was gonna die.
Yeah.
Or he realized the end was coming, and as a Nazi soldier himself, that, he would receive that end. And sort of in the end, he just kind of was like going out as himself, so to speak. I think that's what a lot of that was. And just like, fuck it. He put on a crazy costume and is like, firing into oblivion. That's the way I kind of saw it, but I don't know.
No, I agree with you. And then comes to like, well, the last, if we can just for a bit save that for the end, because I think that goes hand in hand with the mom, and the emotional power behind that. But just to quickly go over some other funny things, like. The last sequence in terms of the final battle that happens in the town, it still in a way it just shows the cost of war, the devastation, the destruction. But in some, you also see even in the last moments, the Nazis, just how truly horrific they were. Like it's kind of embodied in Rebel Wilson, a little bit. Oh yeah. Because till the end, she's like, I saw your face. You were like, "What the fuck?" As the Allies were about to enter the town, she was sending little boys with like basically death bombs on them to go hug the Americans, like basically sending out suicide bombers, like these little kids. And then when she was like going to what's his name? Oh, great, JoJo, you've been promoted.
Oh yeah, put this on. Here's a gun. Go fight for your country. Yeah. And
I think she gets blown up, right? Like she goes up in a blaze of glory also. Like, and it's like,
but
damn.
That is a great moment of, it's like this thing that at the very beginning of the film, he idolized so badly.
Yeah.
And then he's just looking at it like, what the fuck was I thinking? What is this? Like, this is a nightmare. There's that shot of him just looking at everything like in horror, and then he has all the, his former Nazi youth troops, running into battle behind him. Again, there's pretty funny, pretty dark, but it also serves the character. I thought all that was really good.
One of the recurring things that we see in the film, and it was a very good visual aid for what happens later on, is, JoJo Rabbit. We begin the film, and towards the beginning of the film, one of the recurring things with JoJo is he can't tie his shoelaces, which, I think is kind of pretty inherent in the title also. Because we all know the rabbit thing when you tie your shoes.
The rabbit ears, cross them.
Yeah. Which is what his mom does with that. And there are, many times in which those two are in a scene together. And from JoJo's point of view, it cuts to he identifies his mom through her shoes. And it's built up in such a great way, an effective way as far as the filmmaker is concerned. Because then the moment that you want to create really is paid off in that. after the Gestapo leave the house and everything, we find and it's also just how it was set up. It was like this like light music playing, JoJo's, just going about town, kind of like, a sigh of relief that they didn't find Elsa and everything. And then as you don't exactly know what train he's following. He's just following, I think, a butterfly or something. Then he stumbles upon the center of town, which they were previously watching the people who were hanged. And he sees his mom's shoes. And like it stopped him dead in his tracks. Then he sees her, and then he starts crying, and it was a gut punch. That was
like, and that's where his performance really comes through. And it's one of those things where it's like, you hear people in the audience like, "Oh no," those faint little like, "Oh God, no,"
gasps, if you will.
Yeah. And the way the performance worked was so well, because you could tell the kid was just broken, and he didn't even know what to do. Because there's a point where he's crying and just hugging her, and then like he just kind of like not knowing what to do, he just like starts to fix her shoe.
Yeah. Like,
I don't know if it was untied or something, but he starts fixing it for her, and then he like, what am I doing? And then he goes back to freaking out and like holding onto her leg. And just crying and crying. And he was probably there for hours, because it smash cuts to him just sitting there staring at her body. And that's something where it's like you start the film and it's so humorous and whimsical, and it's dark material, but you never know exactly if it's really going to go there with some of the darker sides of where they could. And then when it does, it hits you like a ton of bricks, because it doesn't set you up for it clearly. Like, I agree, there was those obvious setups where he, at least twice before, he identifies his mother by seeing her shoes, like she dances and stuff like that. But it wasn't clearly like, okay, we're getting to the sad part, we're getting to the sad, and here it is. It was very much like going along this whimsical tale, and then bam, it hits you like a ton of bricks, which I think makes it so much more effective
and powerful, really.
Yes.
And obviously emotional. And as far as like immediately what happens thereafter is, in a last gasp of whatever fanatical idealism was within him, the last bit of Hitler in him tried to go kill Elsa, but he couldn't. Which is also, again, an emotional scene. And it also kind of goes into with, just to be clear about that, I think it was obvious that the Gestapo had done that, and that's why they were at the house. And maybe that's why also Sam Rockwell was at the house, to check up on JoJo. Like, because if you notice, and I noticed this back when I rewatched the film, the last thing that Sam Rockwell says to JoJo is, "Stay home. Just stay home, JoJo."
Oh, that's right. He's like, we don't need you helping us anymore. Just stay home, look after your sister. Probably like, we don't go outside, basically.
So a lot of I love films that tell you so many things that add to more and more layers to it. But back to what you were saying about Rockwell, at the very end when all the Nazis are captured, you need to help me out with this, because it seemed, as far as when JoJo was captured and put in with the rest of the Nazis, because he was wearing the Nazi jacket, and there were some very clear visual aids to show you what happened to a lot of those people. Were they really gonna kill JoJo? Because
it's war, man. Shit like that happens all the time in war. He's wearing a Nazi uniform.
I mean, that's something that just caught me off guard. I mean, I understand killing Nazis, but for me, it's hard to consider a 10-year-old a Nazi. 10-year-olds can't grasp political concept. They can't grasp that. It's just all pretend.
But they can pull a trigger. I mean, it's ugly. I hate war.
Obviously, you and I fall on the same side of this. There's no, I think, degree of separation between that. We're very, we're just repulsed by the whole thought of it. But to me, 10-year-old's a 10-year-old, especially that 10-year-old. And it's like, I was just shocked watching it, and like the terror in JoJo, like, and it's like, no, I was like thinking, oh shit, they're gonna kill him. But Sam Rockwell saved him.
Well, what I found so interesting is, he tells him like, again, he never drops the Nazi act necessarily, because he says like, that Jewish book you're writing, I'm sorry I never gave it credit. I think it's a nice book. Go, so he doesn't say, he doesn't drop everything, but he says, go take care of your sister. And I'm really sorry about your mom. She was a good person, an actual good person. And I thought it was really interesting that he made that distinction. And then, of course, to save his life, he yanks his uniform off, pushes him to the side, and, spits at him, calls him a Jew, just to get him away from the situation. And they, of course, very thereafter take him away with the rest of them, Sam Rockwell's character, and execute them. It is war. So yeah, that was a pretty, again, it hit me emotionally in ways I wasn't expecting the film to.
Just the humanity in that scene alone. It's like with some, and Sam Rockwell does play a lot of these characters, especially in his later career, that are on the surface just terrible. But there's something in there that is a little bit redeeming. And in this case, there is it was unexpected, and also just like a little itty bit of humanity in him, to save a little boy's life. It's just, it's heavy, man. It's really heavy what happens in this film. And that's why I think it's successful, because to me, I think not showing that would have, I think, been grounds for what people are calling, some people say the film doesn't have any teeth. I don't know. I think about the stuff that we just discussed, and I'm like, what are you talking about?
Well, I think what gives it teeth is the way a lot of the harsher, more realistic things are just set up against this very light film, very light and funny film. And the way those two contrast each other make the darker aspects seem just that much darker. And I feel more effective as well, because you also care about these characters, with which everything is happening. Oh God, I can't remember, what was it rated?
You mean like the rating of the movie? Wasn't it rated R?
Okay. Yeah, that's a pretty deliberate, if it's rated R, that's a pretty deliberate choice to not show the violence throughout the film. Because they don't show his mother. They don't show her face. They don't show her dead. You see her hanging and you see her shoes, but that's it. You don't see them getting shot. And again, it's one of those things where it's like, with horror, not seeing it can sometimes be more effective than actually seeing it.
You're right. Never mind. You're right. Peter, was actually rated PG-13.
Okay. Still, he chose to make it PG-13.
There's just something about the ending of the film, and I feel that it's meant to be uplifting, but there's something I think just truly inspiring about the end of it, where it just, in the most, I guess, JoJo Rabbit way, it ends with Elsa and JoJo just dancing to David Bowie's Heroes.
We can be heroes.
And then there's this really, wonderful quote at the end. I don't know who it was from. I'm so sorry about this, but
It's from what's his name's favorite poet?
JoJo's?
No, remember her fiance? I forgot his name.
Oh, yeah, I forget. Nathan?
I think it was Nathan.
I think it may have been Nathan. Let everything happen to you and whatever. And it's like, it was kind of a kick-ass way to end the movie. To me, I don't know. I was inspired at the end of it. I thought it was, overall, to me, it worked in ways I never expected this film to do so. Like, I think for me, the films that hold me and grab me emotionally leave a lasting impact. And I could not stop thinking about the film. So I had to go back and watch it again and loved it even more the second time. Which is kind of what, happened with the next film we'll talk about in this block. But any final thoughts or anything else that we should talk about?
Just
JoJo?
To wrap it up, like I said, this film, I think, affected me emotionally more than I thought it would. It's not a feel-good film, but it makes you want to do good by the end of it.
Yeah.
And those I think are just as important. It is entertaining. It's very funny. It's a very great story. And it's the type of film that I've never really quite seen before.
Yeah.
And I'm really happy that I got the opportunity to see it on the big screen. And this is a great job, Taika. Keep making them. I'm there for Love and Thunder.
And before we get to Knives Out and that awful Ruin Johnson, let's get Kyle's perspective on JoJo Rabbit. He is a big Taika fan, and he so lovingly sent us over an audio recording of what his thoughts are on the film. So here's Kyle.
Hello, Red Spotters. This is Kyle. I was asked to get my thoughts on JoJo Rabbit and Knives Out. First off, I'm pretty sure they told you this. Peter, Alexis, and we went on a double feature day, and we saw JoJo Rabbit and Knives Out all on the same day. And I'm going to review it in the order that we saw it. So first up, we have JoJo Rabbit, directed by Taika Waititi. I love Taika Waititi's directing. I haven't seen Beasts, but I have seen What We Do in the Shadows and Thor Ragnarok. I think Thor Ragnarok is the soft reboot to end soft reboots, and I think that it was a really classy way to bring in Thor back into the MCU. And What We Do in the Shadows is probably one of my favorite comedies of all time. Probably in my top 100 favorite films of all time. I just love the humor. Like every time I watch it, I constantly laugh and all that stuff. While we get both of the laughs, factor that comes out of Taika Waititi's directing, I really think that Taika really never showed like how much he could pull that emotional heartstring, and the muscle and everything like that. So I think that this movie, it showed me that he can. You got the little sense of like Odin. I guess spoilers for Thor Ragnarok. When Odin leaves and dies and everything like that, and he leaves the physical plane, you kind of feel that way, but it's like it's not really like gut punching, and you really get a gut punching scene, which I'll mention in the spoiler section of my review. I think this movie really, really set itself apart from his works. I mean, it definitely has all the mannerisms of what Taika Waititi does. I think he really showed that he is a force to be reckoned with. And with that being said, I think that this movie really says a lot about anti-hate, how like don't judge a book by its cover, especially in that aspect. Don't judge a book by its cover, because it turns out that Scarlett Johansson's character in the movie is hiding a Jewish girl, and by the way, she's fantastic. I think that a lot of the actors are fantastic. First of all, I'm going to mention Roman Griffin Davis as JoJo. I think he knocked it out of the park. If he didn't knock it out of the park, I think that this movie would have faltered a little bit. But no, I think that this really, shows what a force. I mean, he's like the European Jacob Tremblay kind of thing, because he's a kid actor to be reckoned with, who feels like the way he acted, it feels like he's had like 10, 20 years of experience on him. He's just like so natural in the way that he acted and everything like that. And from his from his character development of him being immature and wanting to join a band, what's her name? I forgot the name. The Jewish girl that he meets. She says that you're not a bad person. You just want to join a club, And I think that's a really good way to put it, especially with all the youth who are being brainwashed by the Nazis at the time. This is a great period piece. I love everything like that. But then they added like modern day comedy edge that I think that was really good. I mean, you got a little bit set forward from Inglourious Bastards that Quentin Tarantino did, like modern day kind of humor, but like set in period, and you got that with here. And I think that the Taika really took off. Speaking Taika, I think he did really good as Adolf Hitler, the imaginary friend. I think that he like really displayed what was going on in JoJo's head, and I think that was really nice. Sam Rockwell, holy shit! Like, this man could do no wrong. I think a lot of what else? Alfie Allen, he was there. He had all his parts, unlike his Game of Thrones counterpart. Rebel Wilson, she was funny. Everybody was funny. Everybody was on it. Thomasin McKenzie, I think her name is. Elsa, there it is. She's the one who's hiding in the thing. And also Scarlett Johansson. Like, I know she's been having like a shitty press year, but this movie, like, oh my god, her whole I'm gonna get into spoilers right now. She plays JoJo's mom, and like, she's throughout the whole movie, she's teaching him like, be kind, you don't have to be, Nazis are losers kind of thing, and that's a really good moral ground to stand upon. But then, throughout the whole entire movie, she's teaching him how to tie shoes. Shoes is an important part of this movie, because like the identity of like the shoe tying thing is between the bond between his JoJo's mom and him. And when it turns out, spoilers, this is full on spoilers, the twist where it turns out that the Gestapo and the Nazis find out that she's part of a rebellion. They unfortunately hang her in the town square, and when JoJo finds out, you don't see the actual body itself, but you see the shoes. And when he starts trying to tie the shoes, and he hugs her legs, like, because that's the only thing you see, and that's the only thing he can grab. It was emotionally, driven. Like, you could hear a pin drop. Like, it was such a shock, because you thought, oh, it's gonna be a happy ending. All of them are gonna wind up, all this Taika Waititi, greatness. And this is where he put that edge. And I think that this really puts him as like a good emotional director as well. A really good emotional director. You got a little ounce of it when you saw Thor Ragnarok. Now, again, I haven't seen Beasts, but I want to see it. I think that with that being spoilers off, I think that this really sells its bones well, and I think that this it's funny, but it does have an emotional gut punch that I think that is really recommended. I'm gonna wait a little while to see where it stands in my top 10, but it's definitely worthy of that position in the top 10 of my this year. I think with that being said, like the movie has a German version of Heroes. And I think that with David Bowie's, thing, what he's trying to say is heroes, it's just all in the chorus. We could be heroes just for one day, it's just takes, the message is like being kind and, and not being hateful, loathful, and all that stuff. I think that was really important. And I think that is the main message that is being sold throughout the whole entire movie. And it's very important for that, especially now. I think that right there is the important message to learn. A lot of complaints have been made about like Nazis being glorified in this movie, and that's not the case. They're displayed as despicable losers, and with the movie displaying them as such, because of their hateful nature and them calling the Jewish people demons and all that stuff, and like the way that JoJo earlier in the movie portrayed Jewish people, it was coming from a very I get, lack of a better term, loser standpoint. But now he gets to like learn through Elsa that you don't need to have that. I think that's the most important thing about this movie, that I think JoJo Rabbit is worthy of being seen because of that. I don't think that this movie I'm thankful that something like this exists because of its importance and because of the way that it threw itself out there, not only comedically but emotionally too. The movie doesn't end in like a grandiose thing. It's very intimate. The movie ends very intimately, and I think that this is great.
Well, with that, let's move on to, I guess you could call him this podcast's favorite person in the world. Rian Johnson made a new movie.
Ruin Johnson.
It's called Knives Out, and it stars
Knives
so many
Out
people.
Made my... Oh, wait. I'm sorry. The Last Jedi made my parents get a divorce. How dare you, Rian Johnson?
Go
You
ahead.
ruined everything.
Go ahead and ruin. And oh God, go ahead and ruin. Go ahead and list off the synopsis, and as you're doing that, just go ahead and get the huge cast out of the way with, if you can.
Oh God, yeah, that's true. Okay, here we go. Knives Out. Hell, any of them could have done it. I love these taglines. When renowned crime novelist Harlan Thrombey is found dead at his estate just after his 85th birthday, the inquisitive and debonair detective Benoit Blanc is mysteriously enlisted to investigate. From Harlan's dysfunctional family to his devoted staff, Blanc sifts through a web of red herrings and self-serving lies to uncover the truth behind Harlan's untimely death. Okay, it stars Daniel Craig, Chris Evans, Ana de Armas, Jamie Lee Curtis, Michael Shannon, Don Johnson, Toni Collette, Lakeith Stanfield, Christopher Plummer, Catherine Langford, Frank Oz, Jaden Martell, Ricky Lindholm. Oh,
Bless
I'm
you.
sorry. I'm allergic to stars. Emmett Walsh. And then I think people get less famous from there on.
I speak for everyone on this podcast network, and I mean literally everyone that went to go see this film. It is the rare film, I think, from the spectrum, from the Martinez's to the Morenos, where we can all say this film is amazing. That's the review.
I do declare. There has been a murder.
I suspect.
It's
Foul
really great.
play.
I loved it. I want to see it again.
You should
I
see
really
it again.
wanna
I
see
saw
it
it
again.
twice.
Yeah,
So
but like
much
in a
worth it.
theater.
In the theater. Yeah.
I'm really, really happy. It is making bank.
Yeah.
It is soaring critically. It is soaring commercially. It is soaring as far as like it has an A- cinema score, which is that's good.
No, it's great, especially for this film. And I mean, to just quickly add up real figures to it, exceeded its $40 million holiday opening, and also grossed $70 million worldwide, which for a film of this scope is outstanding.
It's great. It's great. I'm so happy that this film is doing well financially, specifically.
It takes a lot for all of the people on our Red Spotlight network to universally agree on one film. I don't think it ever happens. I know Hereditary was one last year where we all really loved it, but it takes a lot to get all of us on the same, I think, boat on a movie. And it's also, I think, representative of everyone, because everyone, and I mean everyone, seems to love this movie. Not just the fact that it's making money, but people, I think, were genuinely just like wowed by this film.
Yes, it has gotten rave reviews, not just from the critics, but from many that have gone out and watched it as well. I can say we didn't see it with like a sold out crowd. It's tattooing,
Yeah.
You're not gonna get that sold out crowd necessarily for this kind of film, but it was a handful of people, and they very much enjoyed the experience. Or maybe I was just listening to myself laugh because I was laughing.
No, people were
throughout the whole.
You were
thing.
laughing, and you were laughing loud. I was laughing. We were laughing loud, and so was Kyle. I think, I noticed the audience, and they were laughing as hard, I think, as the rest of us were. But I think we have to just pause a little bit and just appreciate just how happy we are that an original film made money. Like, to put it in perspective, Knives Out is as successful worldwide as a debut anyway, with the likes of the other original films this year that made a lot of money, which was Jordan Peele's Us and Quentin Tarantino's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
That's really good.
And to also put it in perspective, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is probably the biggest original movie of the whole year, and it made a little over $100 million. That gives you a little bit of perspective of how little money these films make in comparison to the big Disney films of the year. But still successful in their own right, and thankfully so. We needed it. We really needed anything other than Disney to make some money.
Plus, the fact that it's Rian Johnson getting the W is pretty great.
I mean, if we can talk about Rian Johnson, and I'm not even gonna get into like the whole like saving for spoilers, which we can get into. But I think one of the things that we hadn't talked about as much as in any other venue is how much of Rian Johnson is in this, and I love the film on its own merits for being great, and it's not, I think, one of the best parts about it, but I think an added bonus, how we as the world get to enjoy this thanks to the putrid and disgusting filth that came out of the Phantom Menace because of The Last Jedi. And I love how the film, even though as we do say that there was, I guess, a little bit of a balanced approach when it comes to, I think, a certain political scene, to me, in terms of a certain character that's referenced as the little Nazi boy, it seemed very clear to me that was, let's just say, a certain hit at certain people, at least to me anyway.
I want to remind people, we take the same stance as Rian Johnson. If you do not like the film, that's perfectly okay. Simply not liking a film doesn't make you a racist, misogynist, doesn't make you a bad person. But if you use the excuse of not liking a film to attack certain people in very disgusting ways, people that worked on the film, actors, actresses, that's incredibly shitty. And that's the kind of thing we very much do not like and will make fun of and talk shit about constantly. And I think when he made The Last Jedi, Rian Johnson saw the ugly side of the internet, so to speak, saw the ugly side of Star Wars fandom. And like all good artists, he used that.
As Carrie Fisher said, take your broken heart and turn it into art.
It rhymed. She was a peach. Yeah, I love this film. I think I like it more than I originally thought I did,
Yes.
and I really liked it.
Yes.
That's why I want to rewatch it, because I like the more I think about it, I'm like, oh man, that was really cool. That was really clever.
The mark of a truly great film is how much it stays with you. And if you find yourself just thinking about the movie days after having seen it, then I think it did its job. But I think if you're going to start with a first and foremost about any of the film, the star is Rian Johnson because of how wonderfully written the film is. The film wouldn't be where it is right now, wouldn't be as highly regarded as it is right now if it were not written the way that it was.
The star is Chris Evans' sweaters.
There's also that.
I think one of the biggest realizations that I liked it more than I originally assumed I did is because I like, especially with these directors like Taika and Ryan, I really love their original work.
Yes.
Right? Like really love it. And especially because people like them or Quentin or Jordan Peele, it's like, them doing established franchises is great because then we actually get good films from established franchises, and that's always great. But the original films always just give me something that I've never seen before, and I love it. And the idea, the talk before this film came out is like, hey, maybe we could turn it into a series, and I was like, no, like you did your whodunit, then just kind of like move on. But after seeing it, like, yeah, I'd love like every few years, it's Benoit Blanc in some new location in a new cast of A-listers, all together, and it's like there's been a murder.
I'm stunned at how many people I've heard like ask for a sequel.
Yeah, I think it'd be so fun because it'd be completely different every time. And Rian Johnson, he'd make sure of that. We completely different actors. Like it wouldn't be bringing back this family and it's like, something else happened to the family and Blanc is back to investigate. Like, no, it's completely different story, completely different themes, location, everything's different. But you're still investigating a mystery, which is a lot of fun.
We have to say, though, is what I just said previously about why the star of the film is the screenplay. Films like these, murder mysteries, whodunits, whatever you want to call it, films like these are made or basically made or not, shall we say, dependent entirely on the writing of the movie. And I think as the further removed we are from the film, the more we can appreciate just how spectacular it was. And it's like, how do you even begin to write this type of movie, which in its inherent DNA has to be a film that is presented just kind of in an upside down, sideways way. And as the film progresses, it slowly unwinds and unwraps like all of these different layers on it. Like, to me, visually, it's hard to grasp how you even begin to think about how you write a movie like this, much less make it great, which I think is the true mark for why people love this. Is it's not just that it's like a good whodunit, it's a great whodunit. And to me, this movie, because of the genre that it's in, kind of was going to work or not, depending if I could figure out where it was going to go. And I was completely surprised. Even though at the same time, looking back on the movie, it was staring me in the face the entire time.
I will say, there was a couple of things that I picked on before the movie revealed. I was like, hey, I'm more clever than maybe. No, I'm not. But like, I did pick up on a few things before revealed, and I was like, okay, that's good because I think that tells me that like I've said before, they're not just throwing twists that don't make any sense for the sake of no one figuring it out. Like, I'd much rather with these films someone figure it out and then it makes sense by the end.
That's the point, though. I feel that's the point of these movies.
It's supposed to make sense. Yeah.
It's not like...
But I feel like some people are so concerned with them not figuring it out that they fuck it up. Yeah, go ahead.
I think an example of bad writing is, let's say this movie had given us an ending that was just beyond belief. Just beyond anything that we had seen previously. The only way a great ending to a film like this would have worked is if in future viewings of this film, we can go back in the earlier parts and kind of piece it together, which I did. When you go back and look at it, there are many more things that, like, yeah, I should have paid more attention to this. And like, it works so well where like the ending is not half-assed or half-made. It just was natural. It didn't feel like writing. It felt like it was just, oh, wow,
yeah,
you know?
This is the natural conclusion. It's just a surprise. This film isn't a whodunit. I don't know. Have you seen The Sixth Sense?
It wasn't no damn mystery box, I'll tell you that. No, I haven't.
Oh, okay. You obviously know the ending though. It's like you haven't seen Star Wars, but you know who Darth Vader's related to. That's not necessarily a whodunit, but it's similar in that there's a twist at the end, and you go back and think like, wow, everything set up was actually there, and then you rewatch it, and it's like, yeah, it's all plainly there. Like, wow, that's really well put together. So that same kind of thing is what you need in a good whodunit. Do you want to get into spoilers? I don't know. Well,
it's like, yes, we're gonna have to, because a lot of the things that I picked up on,
we have to.
We're gonna mention it. But yeah, let's get into this. So the big reveal of the film, and I feel like we have to go there because then we can work our way, back into how we could have seen it. But the big reveal of the film, clearly,
biggest reveal is that Marta's mom is an illegal.
Okay. What I thought was great in a way is like the reveal of the film is whoever killed Chris Evans, who plays Ransom, is the person who is revealed to have killed Christopher Plummer, who plays Harlan. Which it's like, there's two ways about it that makes it so great. One, I felt like if there was one I could have pegged in the beginning of the movie where it's like, okay, he's a leading suspect, it would have been him. But then halfway through the film, it does such a good job of like throwing you off guard where like, no, maybe it's not him. And like to the point where like when it's revealed to be him, it's like, shit. I knew I shouldn't have trusted this guy. But it's like, I think it works so well on two big different ways because of it. And I think to me, the one that makes me just feel stupid is what you mentioned in the car on the way home. And what did you say about the character's name being Ransom?
His name is Ransom.
His name is...
That's the clue right there.
His name is literally fucking Ransom, which is what happens, right? So it's like, if we're talking about the film, oh God. So, yeah, Harlan Thrombey was going to cut off his entire family, and he told Ransom in advance more than anybody else. And so, and he knew that Marta, which we'll get to her in a bit, was going to get the entire inheritance. And so he conceived of all of this thing, including the hiring of LeBlanc, played by Daniel Craig, again, who we'll also get into. And it's revealed that, yeah, he kind of instigated all of it, which means partly, if not all of it, the death, like the suicide is kind of on him, and then also the death of the housekeeper. I think Fran is what they call her. So that was it. And if we're going to go back in the film and like piece together how this could have been it, well, clearly the yelling and him storming out of the house. But one of the things that came, and it came from a very unreliable point of view, which is why I think many of us dismissed it. But when Marta is leaving after she went back to the house and went down the stairs to make sure that like Harlan, quote unquote, was seen by all the other people in the house, Harlan's mother, apparently ageless mother, saw her, and like everybody was like, oh shit. And it's like, Ransom, are you back again? And we all kind of just like dismissed it.
But you know why? Because they show earlier the first shot of Ransom storming off.
Yes.
Is her next to the door going like, are you leaving, Ransom?
Yeah.
So you assume she's, oh, okay, that's your reference point to earlier. See, it's so well constructed. Oh, God.
No, I mean, we can go all day about this, but it's just
there's a million little things
just
he can do.
It's so elaborate.
The fact that everyone drops that he you didn't show up to the funeral, but you're here for the will reading, and it's like, oh, he didn't show up to the funeral, and then that plays into.
But we all just thought that because he's a dick.
Yeah, because he's a piece of shit,
and we just bought that, and it's
yeah.
Again, it's like it's one of those things where it's just staring at you. And so it's like, yeah, I mean, it makes sense. Like, he skipped the funeral. He's a dick. He's coming here for his inheritance or whatever it was. But you know what was another clue is, why would he show up to the inheritance if, as he reveals to the rest of his family, that Harlan told him that he wasn't going to get any of it? And if we're going to buy that version of it, why would we believe for a second he would go there to humiliate himself? Unless
that's the one thing I picked up on.
Yeah,
that's the one where I'm like, okay, well, he obviously knew that no one else was getting anything either, so he went to watch the shit show because he thought it would be funny.
See, I didn't pick up on that. I don't know what it was about it, and I genuinely, I mean, I to me, maybe I felt that he saw something coming, but I didn't think he knew for sure. I just think he was there to like just curious to see who got what or whatever. But to me, looking back on it, clearly it was all, what he knew and everything. But in the moment, it was in a scene where there was no shortage of laughs, shall we say.
That was the best.
One of the great aspects is just Ransom getting up and laughing his ass out the door. That was
they're all freaking out, and that's another reason why I want to rewatch it. There's so much dialogue from each character, and they're all saying something, and like each of their lines is so fucking funny. In the moment that the entire family's just losing their shit because they realize they're not getting anything. And like that whole sequence of it starts in the house and then they all follow her outside to her car doesn't work, which by the way, of course Ransom probably fucked with her car to make sure that she got out and went with him.
Oh shit, I didn't notice that. You're right.
Cuz he pulled up and he's like, "Hop in." So he clearly orchestrated that from the beginning. It was perfect.
I love the fact that this film repeatedly blows my mind. I love it. But to speak on that sequence that we just mentioned, I think it also just shows you the strength of the ensemble. And just like we all were, raving about the casting of it like about 2 years ago, and it was announced, or about a year ago. Like Toni Collette, Jamie Lee Curtis.
That one got me excited.
Michael Shannon.
And she's great.
Michael Shannon was great in this movie. But they're all great. That's the thing about the film. And what I love is how when it begins, like all of these people, all of them are pieces of shit. I mean, let's just be real. And I think it's played to a tune in the film. But it's like, we all know they're lying. And they have some pretty hideous shit to hide, as it turns out from the very beginning of the film.
Yeah.
And we'll get more into as we unravel more and more of this tangled web. But to kind of get into the center of it, The heart of the film is definitely Ana de Armas, who I love that actor. If you have not seen Blade Runner 2049, go see it. She's great in it, as she is in this as well. Like, she's like the heart of the soul in the film, but maybe the glue of it is definitely Daniel Craig as LeBlanc, which I think for me, I don't think I've ever liked Daniel Craig better than I've liked him in this movie.
Yeah, he is so much fun in this. Like, he really comes alive.
And like, he's hamming it up. He's hamming it up in the way that I think was definitely intended for this role, shall we say. CSI KFC. Literally. But that it's more than just the drawl or like, I guess the accent for some people who want to, use that word. But it is a powerhouse performance. It's not just an accent. It's definitely a commitment to a character that's kind of cartoonish, but works strangely for the setting and the type of story that it is. He's just endlessly entertaining. And like, anytime he's on screen, which thankfully is a lot of the time, the movie is just at a 10.
100% agree. That's one of the main reasons that I would actually be cool with the sequel.
It's having him back.
Yeah, bring him back. Like, where were you the night of? Just having, with his southern drawl, just trying to figure everything out. And one of the questions that we also keep forgetting, which was addressed early on, is who hired him? And that's sort of the central mystery.
So much
more
happens.
So than the death.
Yeah, so much happens in the movie that we kind of forget that question's even on our minds, because of we as audiences ourselves are trying to deduce, okay, which one of these people is likeliest to do it. The great part about the film is they're all horrible people, so it's hard to kind of like knock one person off here or there. But at the same time, you forget, wait a minute, who the fuck hired this guy to be here in the first place? But
what's interesting about this film, and there are some, a small portion of people that seem to have an issue with this, is that in a typical types of these films, you're wondering who the murderer is. And the murderer isn't officially revealed until the very end of the film. And with this film, that's technically true. The murderer or intended murderer isn't officially revealed until the end. But seemingly, the murder and everything that happened and how that individual ended up dead is revealed about a third of the way through.
Yeah.
And I saw an interview with Rian Johnson where he said it's like he wanted to do something where it starts off as a murder mystery, then kind of dovetails into like a Hitchcock thriller in the middle, and then dovetails back into
yes, which is why it works even better. You're right.
It's so interesting.
It is. It's endlessly interesting. And I was expecting a little bit of a turn here, because you and we listened to a lot of reviews, and some people were saying that, maybe one in particular, was saying that this film is a whodunit until a certain point, and then it turns into something else. And so, in my initial experience seeing this film, I was like, okay, when it revealed, the wonderful reveal of, at the time, Ana de Armas being responsible for for Thrombey's death anyway, I thought that was the end of the whodunit portion of the film. I really was convinced by that, because it then turned to more of a thriller, shall we say, but then it dovetailed back.
Well, I was convinced that was absolutely what happened.
Yes.
But like you said, there are still those mysteries of like, okay, well, who hired what's his name to come?
Yes.
Like, because of what we're to believe is that this is the story and then that's it. Who's hiring him then?
Well, because halfway through is like, it stops. In some ways, those questions kind of get put in the background, because the bombshell reveal of Marta being named the inheritor of the entire estate and all of the money. Yeah. And then, of course, she's just chased out of the house in one of the best scenes in 2019, maybe of the decade, shall we say. And then the main thing is like, it appears
who's trying to blackmail her.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. With Chris Evans being positioned as a ally and the rest of them being positioned as. I love this moment when this is juxtaposed to where Ransom and Marta are in the diner and they're eating and they're discussing all the stuff, right? And then we cut back to the distraught family in the living room with Frank Oz, and they're all just like literally trying to like scratch through any kind of loophole to screw Marta out of the inheritance. And I love the moment when they bring up some kind of rule where it means that if Marta had a hand in the death, or if even she was under investigation of a criminal investigation, that her legitimacy to the inheritance would be questioned. When Frank Oz mentions that, I love just the vultureness quality of those people, how they ever so slowly just quickly look back and like, oh, Daniel Craig is just sitting in there, and they're like, hey, you think he was murdered, right? And just like,
and that's after the entire leading up to that film, them like, get the fuck out of here. Our dad committed suicide. Why are you here? Get lost. But then in that moment, I agree. Like the way they slowly turn around and then the camera, zooms in on De Blanc. And they're like, you said the case wasn't closed, right?
And then I looked. I think I said over to you, those assholes, which is, I mean, damn, do not fuck with rich people's money, because
oh no,
they will go to the ends of the earth, and like some of these people are going to be significantly hurt by the fact that they're not going to be, supported by Harlan, but they're going to be okay. But they can't tell the fucking difference. And of course they're outraged because they're the family and their father left them nothing. But they're shitty people. Yeah. And another aspect of it, which I find hilarious, that I just like, duh, because there was a moment in the movie where it zooms in on Marta's shoe. And there's a little.
Yeah. Can I tell you real quick? Like the film was basically wrapping up, and I'm like, that's so like. I thought like, oh man, did the movie mess up? Because I thought that was going to be an integral plot point moving forward when they're like, don, don, don. And they showed that there's a little like blood dot on her shoe. And I'm like, oh shit, like this is going to really fuck her up moving forward. And then I'm like, oh, I guess that didn't matter. And then at the very end, DeBlanc's like, oh yeah, I knew you were somehow involved from the very beginning. You have a blood dot on your shoe. And I was like, oh, they got me. They wrapped it all the way around.
Yeah, which also, the editing is spectacular here too.
Which is also great is that like it starts out with him being the detective, but then you as the audience find out what exactly happened, and then he kind of fades to the background a little bit, and you're like, and then even Marta points it out, and she's like, I don't think you're that good of a detective. I think at one point she tells him that, like, I just came out and had to tell you everything that happened. But then of course, there's more to the story. So then you really get the full force of like how good a detective he is in that final third act where, he's sitting on his throne of knives behind him and he's figuring out everything that happened. And then,
which by the way, I want that throne.
Oh my god. Fuck the Iron Throne. I want the knife throne.
Exactly. Which, isn't it kind of the same thing? Isn't the Iron Throne made up of like 1,000,000 knives or whatever?
Swords, yeah. It is a little bit shorter. But that whole third act confrontation where he's unraveling everything, and then, everything with Marta and
the music is great in
Ransom.
this too. Kind of low key, but it's really great. It accentuates the whole unraveling of it. But go on.
That whole third act, I was like, chef's kiss, so good. And the way it ends, so to speak, what Chris Evans does, and at the very end, and then the revelation of that.
There are so many more layers. I want to just right now that's in my mind. So Harlan in this world is kind of like a Stephen King, but for mystery novels. He's a world-renowned author, and the compound in which the film takes place, in which, by the way, can we get this film an Academy Award for Best Production Design? Because holy hell did this really make it in this movie. But the compound in and of itself, not just the house, but the areas all surrounding, are kind of made up of these little, it's an amalgamation of all these little like Easter eggs that are straight out of his own books. Like entrance, the secret entrance to that window was something, another little bit of a Rian Johnson-ism in his characters is one of the detectives that's assisting Johnson is a super fan of Harlan's novels, and he's the character that points out, oh, this is from this book here, from that book there. This is one moment where he was just like, shh, I want to hear this is getting good. And toward the end, that's the guy I'm talking about.
When he was wrapping up and he's like, shut up, this is the big reveal. He's just geeking out about it. Yeah, that was good. And
I think it also speaks to how Harlan, who's, not much of him in the film, but what we got was hilarious, because I love how, when he finds out, to kind of like alleviate the air a little bit, when like, oh, like that's a great method of killing. I should write this down, for a future novel. But the whole thing that he concocts in like 5 minutes is just like, it speaks to his character too, because he's lived a life of basically just running the gamut of like these crazy mysterious scenarios for his novels, and it worked so well. But then it also, there's so much more that happens in that scene though, because he keeps saying how Ranson reminds me so much of myself. What also is, although not as well as Harlan, is Ranson, the villain of the film, also does his own like concocted mystery in like a matter of like minutes, shall we say. Not to a well of a degree, but I think that's a little bit of a connection of how he reminds me so much of myself, and then other aspects. But he mentions in that scene, he holds up a knife, a real one, shall we say. And he says that, Ranson is just,
so sheltered.
He's so sheltered, he would never know the difference between a fake knife and the real thing. Which comes back to the very end of the movie when he's about to assassinate Marta, and which is, I love how it's played in slow motion and everything. He stabs her, and it's a freaking toy knife.
It's a fake knife. And he's just like, oh shit. And then boom, they tackle him.
It's just the layers in this film make it even more entertaining, because like, I think for me, I'm sorry, as an audience viewer, as a fan of film and television and all of these things, I am much more of a fan of things that, I'm sorry, I'm going to use it. I'm going to use the subvert expectations card, that subvert my expectations.
You're pulling it out?
Rather than some bullshit mystery box that means nothing in the end. I'm throwing it down. Those are the things that I prefer so much more of. I love having, I love watching movies where I think are going to go a certain way, then they pull the rug from underneath you, and then you love it much more for the better.
Well, I just like experiencing things I haven't quite experienced before,
We should get to Marta in this film. She's great. I mean, the character is just so sympathetic, as you will. And I thought it was...
Mary Sue, you mean?
Wrong director.
Yeah, I had to.
Wrong director. He made the other one. But it's interesting how the side commentaries that happen in the film, and Marta is kind of a conduit with that, with her being an immigrant, and not only in terms of where the film ultimately ends, but also her own... a big part of the movie and why she's so fucking scared is because her family will be deported, namely her mother. And that's why Harlan does, clearly Harlan loves her. Maybe not in a romantic way, but in a friendly way. And he values her as a good individual and a good person, that he decides to leave her all of this. And he ultimately kills himself to save her. I mean, really what happens, that's like, really Harlan was like the best kind of like rich person you could ever meet. especially compared to all the other assholes in this film. But her identity as an immigrant is definitely one that is continuously mentioned throughout the film.
I think this film is it's about shitty people. Like, it takes a pretty hard stance, very controversial, I know, that shitty people are not good. And they probably shouldn't be that way. And then, like, I know a lot of people are saying, like, oh, it's super political. I actually didn't find it that political, especially because it kind of both sides the thing.
Yeah.
And it's like, when the chips are down, shitty people are going to be shitty people regardless.
Exactly.
Of whatever political stance they take, which I think is true. And what kept Marta above water and what made her win the game is that she didn't play shitty like everyone else. She stayed true.
I love that.
To who she was.
I love that.
Yeah. I love characters that are just like good. I know a lot of people find them boring, but it's like, I like those kinds of people. So I like seeing stories about them. And I think that's what really connected me with Marta and what I really liked about her.
I agree 1,000%, which is why the last shot in the film is ever so delicious.
This has one of the best endings of the year for me as far as the film. It's so good.
Her ending on the balcony of her home, saying goodbye to those assholes, with holding Harlan's mug with "My house, my rules." The end.
As they all look back and stare up at her. It was great.
Yeah.
It was fantastic.
Holy crap. Let's talk about that scene real quick. When the family is all like, fighting politics and everything. I think maybe most people would point out to that scene as being like the perfect Thanksgiving film, which, you know what? Like, rarely do films come out at the right time of year. I mean, rarely can we say that films like made the most out of their release date. Boy, did this movie make the most out of its release date. And with that scene in particular.
I loved it. And again, this is another really good setup because earlier in the film, they talk about how like they love Marta and Marta's a member of the family, and they show scenes of them like going around like, come here, Marta, like come.
Wait, can we say something real quick?
Us.
Can we just pause there? One of the things that I wanted to make sure the second time when I saw this, the film continuously tells us how they do not care at all about her when they all say to her, "I would have loved to have you at the funeral, but I was outvoted."
Every one of them says that, so at least some of them are full of shit, but knowing them, probably all of them were full of shit. But it frames it. The film does. You see a little flashback of like I think Don Johnson's character, like, "Hey, come sit with us over here around the table where they're talking." But like you don't hear anything. You just visually see them do that. But then later in the film, when you find out what actually happened that night or what was happening at that party, it turns out they were just arguing politics, and the only reason Don Johnson wanted her there is for him to come here. You like tell us you're supposed to come here legally, right? Basically like no, like these are shitty people. And the politics fight I found very entertaining because it's like it very much would be a fight you would hear a shitty family have around a campfire, not a campfire, but around the fireplace, around the living room as they're going at it.
Speaking from personal experience, are we?
No. No one in my family has nearly that level of shitty
Well,
takes.
I meant in terms of political arguments.
Arguing politics? Yes. Yeah. I have political arguments, not even like arguments, but yeah, like disagreements with my family, but it's very minute. It's nowhere near like this person's a Republican and this one's a Democrat and we're, going at it. It's more of like one is left and one is slightly more left and we're going to fight over the minutia. It's like what me and you do. We will agree 99% of the time, but that 1%, holy shit.
Yeah, you want to almost kill me for the times that I disagree with you.
Because I'm always right. This is what you need to get through your head.
And I think that, ladies and gentlemen, is exactly how we keep going back to this. To speak more about, Daniel Craig and what really made this performance, I think, just truly outstanding. It's just like, it is so hard to just remain captivating in almost every scene that you're in. But man, does he just commit to the entertainment value, especially in terms of like, his delivery of the reveal is made on his delivery, shall we say. And I love when like the donut hole and the donut hole or whatever, and it keeps like inside another donut hole. And oh my God, like this guy is just a cartoon character in the best way fucking possible. Nothing to say of course, the direction, the performances, the score. This film, all great. And it's like, it's one of those films that, if not the film, that you really can't say too much about going into it until after you've seen it. And then you can, it's for me, one of the most entertaining films to see, because I love like peeling back the layers and like, seeing something new about it that was just great. I love this director, Rian Johnson, God bless him. And I'm happy that, because it's such a universally loved movie, the film hasn't gotten carpet bombed the way that I thought it would. And I'm hearing a lot of crickets, honestly, from, shall we say, those who shall not be mentioned.
Even if some of them have admitted, like, I enjoyed the film. I guess that's my thing. Like, this is the thing that always, like, kind of bothers me. At least with Rian Johnson, when people speak about him, like, people say things like, he can't write a script to save his life. He's the worst filmmaker working in Hollywood. Like, people will make these super hyperbolic statements because they don't like The Last Jedi. And it's like, hey, I get it. You can hate that movie. You can loathe it. But to just make the claim that, like, he's a talentless hack who can't do anything, da-da-da-da-da-da-da. I mean, again, if you don't like his stuff, okay. But, like, I feel like bringing in someone like Scorsese, it's like, if I really just hate one of Scorsese films and I try to say, like, he's a hack, he's never made a good film, he can't write worth shit, and it's like, what? That seems kind of hyperbolic, and I understand. Rian Johnson is no Scorsese. I mean, he's not had nearly the career that Scorsese has. Both, I think, are good directors, but I mean, come on, Scorsese is Scorsese. Let's be real here. I still think that even if you take away, your dislike or like for The Last Jedi, he's very clearly had a very good career so far in Hollywood. And I think people just trying to like erase that is kind of weird. Like, if you dislike a movie, just dislike it and move on. You don't need to try and erase people's accomplishments to feel better. I don't know. I think that's kind of weird and not a good way to handle things. I mean,
again, as often is the case with the media, this in and of itself and their abrupt about face just shows the complete shallowness to their entire coverage of the situation. The fact that so many people in the media were kind of running with this narrative that Rian Johnson was this like black sheep of Hollywood just tells you that these people you shouldn't take them seriously, and they just run with narratives that, and again, when they're proven to be incorrect, they completely do an about face like, Rian Johnson, we love you. We always love you. Get the fuck out of here with that. I mean, really.
To be fair, I don't know if anyone's done that. I think a lot of them have clung to like, well, he's still shit, but I like the film. I've seen more of that.
Well, I'm talking about people who were in media. Not so much like the fans.
Oh, okay.
Not the you know who I'm talking about, but that's different.
I feel like a lot of people in media love the Last Jedi.
They do, but they don't want to say it. And they give credence to this narrative that perhaps, even though they like the movie, he did bad for Star Wars, which I find ridiculous.
Yeah, some of them say that. which I don't know. I guess I don't know. I don't see film that way.
Yeah.
Like I don't judge based off whether the fan base gets angry or not. I'm just like, did I like the film? Okay, I thought he did a great job. Like to me, that's kind of similar to like basing off of whether it made money or not. Which it's like, I guess if you're like an executive and you're hiring, that matters. But I'm not. I just want to see a good film. So if I see a film that made zero money but I think is really good, I'm gonna be like, hey, I love this film. This is great. So yeah, I don't know. The way people view shit is sometimes kind of weird to me.
Absolutely. And it's I'm going to make a prediction that this movie is going to rank very high on everybody's end of the year lists. It's also going to be one of those films that I feel is going to be repeatedly rewatchable. And I'm just going to throw this out there. I would not be opposed to a Red Spotlight audio commentary on this movie.
Oh God. Okay. You know what Kyle would be doing the whole time.
I mean, we've put up with this through all of them already. I mean, what? It didn't really matter what audio commentary we do. It always happens to be the case, doesn't it, with him?
Yeah. True. That's why no more audio commentary.
So anyway, as far as Knives Out is concerned, one of my favorite films of the year, one of my favorite films of the decade, one of my favorite films. Loved it. Love Rian Johnson. Loved the cast. We all did. And so happy that people are actually going to go see this. And I'm happy that it's universally loved, which I think will only make it even sweeter when, let's just say, a certain film later this month completely fails in terms of being as universally loved, because it won't. That's for sure. I'm looking at you. And before we move on to our closing announcements, here's Kyle once again with his thoughts on Knives Out.
Now it's time to talk about Knives Out. And I think Knives Out is, it's no surprise that me, Alexis, and Peter, Moreno, and everybody here on Red Spotlight Entertainment and the Red Spotlight Entertainment Network, we are huge cheerleaders for a particular filmmaker by the name of Rian Johnson. I think that he's a visionary director through and through, and this movie is no exception. I think that with that being said, I think this movie shows that he could take something, make a kick-ass smart movie, and throw it all together with some of the most gnarly cast members ever and make it some of the best filmmaking you could ever see in a movie. I think that this movie is really smart. I'm not going to even go into spoilers in this one because I think this movie is best going in cold, and I went in super cold, so cold that never mind. I was gonna make a Frozen 2 joke, but I'm so tired I will not. You're welcome. I think that the cast is superb. I think this movie kicked my ass in a good way, a really good way. Because number one, I keep on mentioning it and bringing it up. The cast is phenomenal. I mean, we have Michael Shannon, Jamie Lee Curtis, Chris Evans, Don Johnson, Toni Collette, everybody, Catherine Langford, I think. She's from 13 Reasons Why and everything like that. Christopher fucking Plummer, he's really good in it. Frank Oz, Ricky Lindholm from Garfunkel and Oates is on there, and I found that really pleasurable as well. But the main two, my God, is Ana de Armas and Daniel Craig as Marta and Benoit Blanc, respectively. Great. They are fucking great. Like, a lot of the heart and like core of the movie is with Ana de Armas, and because of this movie I want to see more of her. Like, I think that with her being in this movie, I think it displayed the message of the film and made it made out a standpoint. And I think that there are a couple of jabs at the Last Jedi haters. I'm not gonna lie, it does make a couple of jabs at it, but very minute. It is more minute than you think. But with all these characters, because the family is so shitty, you can't help but root for an outsider, who does have a connection with everything. Chris Evans, great, awesome. My homeboy Daniel Craig, I suspect foul play. I adored it. I every time I saw either Ana de Armas or Daniel Craig on screen, I was smiling from ear to ear. It was infectious. I loved the storytelling. I never got tired of the ride, because with murder mysteries, it's so easy to do that, because I predicted that this is going to happen in this moment, you could easily predict that. But with this movie, I was like, I don't even fucking want to know. Go ahead, unveil your secrets to me. I'm just going to take a seat back, watch everything unfold, and I did not want this ride to end. That's why if there was a sequel, I would be completely okay with that, because I love this world and I love everybody involved with it, and I love the final shot of the movie killed me. It was great. It's just this symbolic thing. There's a few on the nose kind of plot points. Pay attention to names, character names. It's very important. I think that this movie is about underdogs, those who are not being taken seriously, and for those who are actually kind. It's kind of a great double feature if you think about it. JoJo Rabbit and Knives Out. Characters are kindness shows its way through all of this, and I think that with that coming into it, that's the most important part of this about these two films, is that kindness, empathy, and I think with that being said, I think that empathy will win at the end, and that's the message of both movies. And with that being said, I think that a lot of with this ride, automatically it's on my top 5 favorite of the year. Spoilers for the top 10 podcast, but Knives Out is definitely on my top 5. I wish I could go more into it. It's so intricate, I can't even tell you. I can't even begin. I've already been going about for 17 minutes or so, and I cannot even begin to tell you how much I adored this film because of what it did. Ana de Armas and Daniel Craig. It's going to be very interesting to see what they're up to in April when it comes to a certain movie. And if you know me, you know which movie I'm talking about. Which, by the way, today is Tuesday, so a trailer is going to come out tomorrow. So I'm excited for that. I'm at a loss of words. No words could describe this movie and how much it's brilliant. And I think Knives Out is one of those movies that you could proudly display. I think it's an instant classic as well, an instant cinema classic. It does definitely belong with Clue. It definitely belongs with all the other classics of the past. It does feel very much, because in terms of the vibe, it definitely feels like a movie that could have came out in the 40s, 50s, 60s, because the way of its exuberance. I think that is the most amazing part of Knives Out is that it's timeless in a timely manner of where we are as a society today. Especially the higher 1%, as Bernie would say. So I think that this is a great film. Awesome film. I can't recommend it enough because of it's all as, and again, I did not go into spoilers specifically because I want you to go on that ride cold. I want it so cold that you go into the unknown. There we go. I made the joke. So everyone go see both movies. I can't recommend them enough. If you're in a movie that, if you're in a community that only shows 5 movies, find a way to go to your nearest city, because I'm pretty sure that's going to be showing these 2 movies. So yeah, without further ado, I'm Kyle Lira, and take it away, guys.
Next episode, we're going to review another Scorsese film, The Irishman. Which we're going to give people extra time to see The Irishman because evidently they'll need it. Yeah. And interestingly enough, we'll get into the whole thing about Irishman. So it's on Netflix right now. Go see it.
Spoilers, Hoffa dies.
They don't know who Jim Hoffa is.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Filthy millennials.
They don't know who that person is.
Filthy Gen X. No, not Gen Zers.
And as far as the rest of the month is concerned, we're going to have reviews. These are previews for John Bong-ho's Parasite, the director who made Snowpiercer and Okja. We'll also be reviewing Lulu Wang's The Farewell, which stars Awkwafina. And many other films, like Claws will definitely be one.
That's her name, right? Awkwafina?
Yes.
Okay. I don't know why. Every time I hear it, I think of BoJack Horseman.
Yes.
Yes. What is it?
Sextina. I think it's Sextina Awkwafina. Yeah.
Yeah, I always think of that. Okay, go ahead.
Brat Pow Pow. Yeah. So those are the films that I'll be covering, and I think there's a Star Wars coming out.
Oh, The Mandalorian, episode 5. That's right. Yeah.
I haven't even seen episode 4.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I saw Irishman twice, so that took up all the time. Yeah. And I'm sure
real cinema.
Well, I mean, I'm sure I don't know, episode 4 seems like a waste of time if you ask me. I mean, I just read your description. I'm like, okay, I can skip it.
It was okay. Episode 4 is my least favorite. Which is weird because I feel like they've had 2 episodes that are kind of filler, and it's like you only have 8 episodes. Like, I feel like if you have 8 episodes, every single episode has to be.
No, man, I saw this coming.
Centrally story driven.
Yeah, and it's clearly not.
See.
Yeah. Yeah.
I still enjoy it. I'm probably gonna enjoy it more than the Rise of Skywalker. So we'll see.
Well, let's at least wait until our review of it, which is coming later this month.
But we could have reviewed it a month ago.
We kind of did. Okay. Thank you all so much for listening on this show here. Thank you, Peter, for being on this wonderful podcast talking about Knives Out and JoJo Rabbit, which I highly expect you will hear us talking about these movies in a future show down the line. Before we go, Peter, do you want to make an announcement about To the Table?
It is coming back for the new year, the new decade. To the Table 2020. It's back, baby.
And we can go ahead and announce our lineup for month 1.
Oh, month 1.
We're now introducing themes for To the Table.
Yeah, you do shit like that when you're bored. Political dystopia month. So we will be going over films such as...
Wait, hold on. I love how Politica Dystopia Month is happening on the eve of the Iowa caucuses in real life.
Yes. Oh my God, you understood why I did it now.
Fuck you. Well, the first one we got to do is one that we had been teased for about a year now, and that is Michael Moore's Fahrenheit 11/9, and then also Idiocracy.
With Alexis, what we're doing now is 1 week Alexis, next week Kyle, 1 week Alexis, next week Kyle. So after that first week, then we're going to do Kyle, which we're going to tackle Equilibrium. Then Alexis, we're going to talk about Network. Then Kyle, we talk about Dread. And then end it off with V for Vendetta.
And the new format is basically you pick the movies and it's just one movie.
Yes. Makes it shorter, more to the point, get into it a little more. Plus, they don't, I don't know if you guys can really, it's more difficult for them to find movies for me, especially if we do it week by week. It's a whole thing. But yeah, this was started primarily by me because I wanted to try and get them to see films, them being Alexis and Kyle, that I felt that they would like, but I knew they're stubborn asses that simply recommending it to them would not do anything. It takes an ass to know an ass,
let's just put it there. But that's how the show was created, yes. Whenever it was first created.
Yeah. I think it's worked.
Yeah.
I think it's expanded your guys' films, and I think you guys have then gone on to see other films that maybe have inspired from the films you saw there. And I think it's good. Seeing good films is good, I think.
You didn't seem very inspired by the choices that Kyle and I gave you?
No, not really.
Are you being serious?
What are the films you showed me? I can't even remember.
Well, that tells you all you need to know.
Bridge of Spies. I remember Bridge of Spies. I remember seeing that one. I remember some of the ones Kyle gave me. Free Fire. I like Free Fire. The one Kyle gave me. Yeah. There was a couple that I liked.
I can't. Thank you all so much for listening. I want to remind you can listen to our podcast anywhere you listen to podcasts. And for the time being, we'll be uploading episodes every single Sunday and Thursday. And until next time, stay under the spotlight, everybody. Bye-bye.